What's the crack, everyone? It's Nathan here, aka the Rambling Kern, and head instructor of Ground School Combat. So apologies for the delay in videos. I've had a number of injuries and a lot of stuff come up in the recent few weeks, so hence the shortage of videos. I will be back to regular programming, so stay tuned. And obviously if you want to sponsor my work, any of that sort of stuff, you'll find everything in the description. So today's video, I wanted to discuss something that gets brought up and commented on a lot, and I mean a lot, and something that I constantly have to repeat to people, and something that I think people really don't understand who haven't done weapon-based martial art, and that is that blunt weapons, sticks especially, because obviously that is my area of expertise, are not heavy. I understand people say, oh well, for X, Y, and Z scenario you want a very heavy massive weighted weapon to blast through and do whatever. The problem with that idea and way of thinking is that in a stick fight, a weapon v weapon scenario, you want to be the first person to hit the other person. And as I've shown in all my various different weapon testing videos, you don't need a huge amount of force to impart serious and potentially lethal damage. So that is often why actual blunt weapons throughout history were surprisingly light, and often lighter than other counterpart weapons. Now, the thing that has to be a caveat to that is the balance of those weapons feels very different. So while they might not necessarily be heavier, they may feel heavier in the hand. Of course, there is exceptions to that. So one of the ones I wanted to talk about, for those who don't know, obviously I am a little bit of a collector when it comes to weapons. I do also have some amazing friends who craft incredible weapons, one of whom has made this amazing club here, and another one you'll see in a second. I'll link to Ernests, the guy who made this. If you're looking for Native American weapons of any sort, I just can't rate him highly enough. So this is an Indian war club. Now this one, fairly short, fairly large bulbous head. Yeah, you know, if you've seen various different Western films, you would have seen clubs like this. Now this club, even though it looks like a very heavy basher and that would, you know, do serious damage, and trust me, it would. This is incredibly hard wood. It is also incredibly light. This thing's only 200 odd grams. I don't know what it is in freedom units, but trust me, this is very, very light. Main reason being, something like this is to be used on foot. So this is a very quick and nimble weapon, often used in conjunction with another weapon. So for example, just remembered I had it to hand. For example, one of these sort of trade knives, a very common combination you would have seen would be use of some sort of knife and a club together. Very common combination, very quick and nimble weapons. If anyone's ever done a spada y daga in a Kali or a Eskrima or an East, depending on what term you want to use for it, you'll understand something like this moves incredibly quickly and is very, very useful because of that. This is not heavy, because you're trying to outmaneuver and outpace your opponent and get to them before they get to you, so you don't need something heavy. Now, the exception to that rule is when we're in a scenario where we either are using a two-handed weapon, in which case weight will be quite different, versus another scenario which I think kind of muddies the water a little bit when it comes to blunt weapons, people on horseback. Now that is where we'll often see cavalry hammers, in Europe especially, which tend to be much heavier, and I think that kind of skews the ideas that people have of like, oh well, clubs are, and you know, warhammers etc. are very heavy, but even those aren't that heavy. Obviously forward weighted, it's going to feel very heavy. We do also have a version of that we see in the West, something like this, which is an Indian war club, again made by my friend Ernest, link in the description. This is still somewhat forward heavy, about double the weight of what that club is, so in the kind of 400 odd gram range. However, still pretty nimble, still pretty light, it's still very easy to move around, and this one's just an incredible piece of work. But being forward heavy, and from what he's informed me, often these are used on horseback, and I can understand that, because even with a light little swing, this thing kind of just wants to fall towards a target. And obviously if that was riding towards you and you get hit with the point of that stone, you know, that's kind of all she wrote. So cavalry weapons do tend to skew what we think of when it comes to weighted and blunt weapons. Now I'm going to go through some historical examples so you can kind of have a look at what I'm talking about and actually see that the weights of these are not really what you think. It's not a crowbar, it's not a big heavy bar. Now obviously in modern day self-defense situations we have very different things to consider. However, you don't want a weapon that's simply one big swing and if you miss, you're done. You want something that you can recover from quickly. I think people understand this idea inherently, but when they don't do it, or they don't spar, or they don't train this stuff in practice, they don't really understand what that is. And for me, I like quite a light stick, because something like Blackthorn is going to hit something, and if it's traveling at high speed, it doesn't need to be hugely heavy to do a huge amount of damage. I've shown this in my testing videos. But anyway, we're going to look at some historical examples. You'll see what I'm talking about, and we'll touch back in a minute. Right folks, so my purpose of this was to show you some museum examples and the sort of weights that you would expect from various different blunt weapons. So first off we have an all steel warhammer weighing about 900 grams. Next up we have a kamagong. This is a hardwood stick about 2 foot in length, often used in Filipino martial arts. And you can see even this only 340 grams. Now this is one of the heaviest warhammers I was able to find, one-handed at 1.4 kilos. Now this is a cross-section of shillelaghs made by Liam over in the old shillelagh store. These all are roughly kind of 3 foot plus in length and all range at about 300 to 400 grams. Next up is one of the Native American war clubs I mentioned. This one is 770 grams. Next up we have an all steel medieval mace at 850. Now a slightly heavier war hammer slash pick at 1.1 kilos. And a much sturdier all steel mace at 1.3 kilos. And this very wide, very broad bladed sword, one of the heavier one-handers for sure at 1.6 kilos. But obviously I didn't want to just show one example of a sword. I wanted to show you a good cross section and show you the sort of weights that you would be expecting to deal with. Now this image went viral a while ago, but it's a very good image to show you the sort of weights that you would expect from one-handed weapons. And as you can see here, we only really start to get up into the kilo range when we look at very thick bladed and long bladed one-handed weapons. Only do we get past the 1.5 kilo mark when we look at true two-handed weapons. Now obviously there's outliers to this, but my point in showing this is that you don't want a one-handed weapon that is way heavier than other weapons on the battlefield, especially with a blunt weapon which is going to be top weighted. It will just lose all ability to control it and swing it, and that's absolutely key when you're trying to use a weapon of war. You want to make sure the weapon that you have is fast moving. And I think this image really shows that you don't need an especially heavy weapon to be effective. Well, there you are folks, that was a few different historical examples. Just wanted to show that these are all from various different exhibits. Most of the Warhammers and clubs that you would have seen are from the Met Museum, so you can go and check those details if you don't believe me. But those weights and stats are all accurate. You will see, especially the single-handed weapons, are much lighter than you would think. And obviously the weight is going to go up because of the material. Metal weapons are just going to be inherently heavier, and wooden weapons are going to be lighter. Unfortunately, there doesn't really seem to be a lot of the war clubs and wooden weapons weighted in the Met Museum. I don't really know why. Maybe they just didn't think it was quite as important. But for most of the clubs, shillelaghs and various different sticks I've handled, they do tend to be on the lighter side, and the ones that are way more usable and easier to wield are definitely on the lighter side. So if you're interested in any of these sort of clubs and weapons, you'll find the links down in the description. If you would like to see some videos on these and some discussions with the maker of these, as well as some comparisons between these and Irish sticks and Irish weaponry, please do let me know. It's a series that the two of us have considered for a while, especially with some of the interactions between early Scottish and Irish settlers and Native Americans and the kind of crossover with those weapons. So if that's something you'd like to see, do let me know. It's definitely something that I've considered for a while. And obviously if you want to take a class in Irish stick fighting and learn more about Irish martial arts, you'll find the links to my class down in the description. Weekly classes in Dublin. And obviously if you want to get in touch, let me know. Apologies for the delay in videos. Been incredibly busy. Like I said, I've had a number of injuries that have kind of taken me out of practice. But a lot more coming this summer. So thank you very much for watching. Really appreciate the support. and Slán.